Now, Adler taught something that was critical. And he didn't really say it in these words. So these are my words, but I think if he were alive today, he would have said this. That people seek commonality. Right? We reach out and we are listening as we talk with people. Do we have anything in common? Right? And if we only find differences, we start to distance. If we find commonality, we bond. And that is what's happening in our world today. That we are exaggerating the concept. The differences are bad instead of just different. But that we are all human beings. We all come with the need to belong. We are part of one community, which is humanity. And if I focus on differences, I will distance you. I will judge you, and I will not accept you. If I focus on commonality, I will join with you. I will find the strengths in you. I will not find the weaknesses in you. I will find the strengths in you. So belonging is about, and Adler was an incredible social scientist, and he also believed that differences were the richness of the world. That if we were all the same, and we all felt the same, and we didn't recognize that often we need to understand the differences as well as the commonality, that we would not build a community. And that's exactly what we're doing across the world. We're not building communities, we're challenging communities. And so we, the helpers, we, the counselors, we, the social workers, psychologists, doctors, we have to be those people that build commonality, that find commonality. Because until you find commonality with a client, you are less effective as a therapist. If I believe we have nothing in common, I am at a psychological difference from you. How am I going to influence you if I'm focusing on what I don't have in common with you versus what I do have in common with you? Because human beings have more in common than they ever have differences. The need to belong, the need to be connected, the need to be capable, the need to contribute, the need to be part of something. That's what Adler said. And some of you have already heard of the 4 C's. Have you heard the concept, the 4 C's, the I am connected, I am capable, I count, because I'm invaluable, and I contribute. And I have the courage to do my life. I have the courage to do my life. And many of the people that we judge as different have a much more difficult life than any of us. Right? Many of those people. And the courage that it takes is unbelievable to be different. Now, you remember, you are the bearers of hope for clients. If clients do not look into my face and see I believe in them, I believe there's something different that can happen here, even if it's a baby step. People change in baby steps. They do not change in leaps until they are given 3 months to live. Then if you say, here are 3 things you will be doing, or you will not be here, everybody changes like that, right? Tell them they've got 6 years. They'll say, I will get to that. You see what I mean? So change is not something we all welcome. In fact, you encourage people to change, and often you don't want to change. So here is what is a miracle. If we want to talk about miracles. This is actually a model of interpersonal communication, and you have all of this in your booklets. So communication is, I have an intention that I want to give to you, or a message. So here's the sender. They put it through their filter. So all of you packed a suitcase under the age of 10 years. And into the suitcase, you put your belief about yourself, your belief about people, your belief about the world, your belief about how you could get what you needed in this world. You packed beliefs about men, you packed beliefs about women, you made beliefs about marriage and coupleship and family. All of that is a pre-conscious reality that all of you carry. You all have a suitcase. And then you marry somebody with a suitcase and think you're all the same suitcase, which is a joke. Then you have children, and they're packing too, and you say, oh, you're just like us. No, they're not like you at all. They're perceiving the world the way they perceive the world, right? And so we want to look at the filter that I'm using as I intend. My tone of voice, my nonverbal, my verbal are all a part of every communication. And so I'm pushing it through the filter to send it to you. And now you're the receiver and the interpreter, and you have a filter. And you're filtering what I said through your filter, right? And somehow the sender and the receiver think they're joined together. What do you think is the likelihood that I ever understand what you just told me? Right? This is like a miracle, the model of communication. And we act as if whatever I said you heard, and whatever I interpreted and needed you to interpret, right? Because I said something actually in the demo and it was wrong. Right? I said, I don't know, I put out a question. And the response was not, right, that I got it, which is a very important piece. When they tell you, no, that's not really how I feel, do not feel badly, feel grateful. That means the relationship with the client is safe enough for them to say, no, that is not where I'm coming from, or no. But often they say yes when they say no. And that's why you need to be really experts at nonverbal communication. Life is movement. Sometimes it's slow, gradual, but always, Adler said, do not always pay attention to the words, watch where the feet are pointed. In other words, what are people doing versus what people say they are doing or not doing or could do or will do. Does that make sense? It's about movement. So if I'm saying I'm coming here for anxiety, and I would really like to lower my anxiety, and I go home and watch scary movies and scary things and the news, because that would scare anybody, right? And if my television is always on and I'm always talking about what's wrong with the world, there is not one chance that you will lower your anxiety. This is a very important quote. Rudolf Dreikurs, who was a colleague of Adler in Vienna, fear is a misjudgment, doubting our ability that we can handle a situation. And isn't that true? Don't people come to us already saying, I'm not comfortable with this. I'm uneasy about this. I'm feeling really concerned that I don't know what I'm doing. There's a fear. There's an anxiety already there. And our job first is to reduce that. Nobody can change in fear. So for a long time, it had seemed to me that life was about to begin, real life, but there was always some obstacle in the way, something to be gotten through first, some unfinished business, time still to be served, or a debt to be paid. Then life would begin. At least it dawned on me that these obstacles were my life. How many of you have had a life like that? I'm waiting to be happy, people will tell me. And I say, oh, good luck. If I could ban happiness books, I would do it. I am so tired of this concept that we came into the world to be happy. We came into the world to have joy and sorrow. There is nobody that gets through life without joy and sorrow. And to hate the sorrow, which also forces us to grow often, right? A lot of the sorrow that comes into our lives teaches us, helps us figure out new strategies, helps us overcome whatever we need to overcome. And if we only have the joy, I would not want to be a therapist. Because I have no idea how you would empathize with people who often are coming in sorrow and you are in La La Land. Nothing about the movie. But I would have been upset if it did win, to tell you the truth. There's my biased apperception, right? In other words, we cannot encourage our clients to believe that life is a place where happiness is its goal. Self-okayness might be a goal, being grounded in your life and appreciation and gratitude and connection might be your life, but happiness is one feeling, and that is not to be a state. It never is a state. How many of you have ever been happy and lost it? How many of you got to that equilibrium and it didn't stay? Right? And you know what's fun about happiness? It's just like sorrow. Sorrow comes and gets better. Happiness comes and gets worse. It's an interesting life we live. So be careful chasing rainbows. Because what I find is if I'm realistic, I do better with clients because often they want the kinds of things that are not realistic. I want to be happy all the time. I don't want to feel angry ever. I don't want to feel any guilt. Well, who is that human being? And if you look like one, you better tell them. You've had sorrow and you've had joy. My mother was killed in a car accident when I was 16 years old, instantly. So we never got to say goodbye. And we never did any of those things, right, that you do in terms of if even a person is ill. So I remember it took me 6 years, I would say, in grief to work through, to resolve, and, you know, I'm still working with it. But the thing it taught me is the gift that I have cherished. We only get the day we wake up to. So I am very conscious of living in the present and being in the present and being fully with people in the present. And I teach them to stop being in the future so much and come back to the present, because the only influence you have over a day is the day you are in. And to assume you can throw that day away because it's not important, I'll get so many more, well, that's a myth. Because actually, none of us know. So I work to live fully every day I get. And I'm also very grateful for the day I get. And I say thank you for the day I get. Now, I might sound like a pessimist, but it's made me a realist. It's made me a real realist. And I often say to my mom, who I consider part of the energetic spirits in my life, that I am very sad it happened, but getting a lesson in life that early has taught me much, much, much more than I could handle anything. After I got through that, I could handle anything. You could throw almost anything at me, and I could handle it. Why? Because I'd learned that I could face something that I had no plans to face, but I had to face, because death is part of life. I can pretend it isn't. And so now at 67, I know I'm in my last quarter of life, right? I'm going to extend it beyond a bit, but, you know, I have to be realistic. This is my last quarter. So yes, I can do whatever I want, but I also have to be realistic that I am on my next journey, wherever it is to be. And I live the day I'm in because I have no idea where I'm going, right? And I'm not sure where I came from. So therefore, I'll just live where I am, and it makes me a much more powerful individual in my work and in my life, right? One of the techniques I use with all people is we create a cheerleading circle, so it looks like this. Okay. So the person is in the middle of the circle. Now, as a therapist, don't put arms the way I'm going to, because I'll tell you why. So I now will help that person find as many cheerleaders who are people who they feel are positive, believe in them, might say something good about them. And we start building a cheerleading circle so that every time they're feeling discouraged, feeling frightened, feeling overrun, overwhelmed, they go back and ask, what would the cheerleaders say to me at this moment? What would Marion say? What would my mom say? What would my friends say? And all of a sudden, they have some other way of looking at it rather than the self-deprecating way that so many teach themselves. We have been so wrong in teaching children to judge themselves and to tell them that there's only certain things that are okay, not other things. In many circumstances, a lot of what we say isn't okay becomes okay. Do you see what I mean? Depending upon the social embeddedness situation you're in. So I take everybody deceased that were significant to that person. I take pets. I take therapists. Because sometimes they don't have any family members that they would put on a cheerleading circle, but they need cheerleaders, right? So I am automatically on all of their circles. So I say, well, we're going to start with me. I'm on your circle. You can take me off anytime, but I'm putting myself on. right? So you have to give them the choice. If they don't want you there, you can't stay. But they usually keep me because they're too embarrassed, I think, to put me off, right? But I must say, one client one day, I was challenging her a little bit in terms of an issue, and she said, "You're not being a very good cheerleader right now." Which was absolutely true, because I was pushing her a little bit to say, maybe we could, and she was resisting, and I said, you know, maybe, what about, here, let me give you an example, which meant I was pushing, right? But I thought it was so perfect. You're not being a good cheerleader. I said, well, don't disown me. Like, don't take me off yet. I can improve. But sometimes the pets are very important, because people have had pets as children, or pets, you know, things that are, you know, and they can go back in their childhood to get these people. They get deceased people, like my mother has always been on mine from ever. She's on my children, she's on my husband has a really close relationship with my mother, but never met her. And at the wedding of my daughter, she made a dedication to my mom, and she had this song that Mom sang a lot, and so she had it played, and we did a toast, and she said to me after, Mom, do you know what the most special moment was that happened? Everybody stood up. With impromptu, nobody said we should all get up, but for some reason she was standing there doing the toast, and everybody just stood up. It was like an honoring, right, of the relationship. So this idea that when people are gone, who have deposited into us, remember, people who've deposited, your emotional bank account is a deposit bank. So our job is to keep depositing in emotional, psychological banks for people so that they have something to draw on. So I discuss with my clients all the time that they have a bank account, and we have to deposit, and they're withdrawing, and then we have to look at how much withdrawal and how much, you know, infusion, so that we keep them feeling they can do something about it. So we create a cheerleading circle, and people keep this with them. They travel with it, they have it in their purses, and they say, I can never get your voice out of my head. And I say, I'm really sorry. They say, I know, I am too sometimes, right? Because they have to go back and find something, right, that they'll feel okay about that day. But this has been powerful, I think, and it's very much an encouragement tool. Adler talked about encouraging, the courage to be positive, the courage to embrace people and see their strengths. He talked about this stuff in the early 1900s when other people were saying, well, who are you? And where do you come from? And you know what he was smart enough to do? He went to families. So he opened 52 child guidance centers in the whole of Vienna, and he did demonstrations of parenting. And hundreds of people would come into an auditorium, and he would teach them that all life problems are similar problems. Isn't that cool? Because it's very true. All human problems are similar problems. They are not different problems. We all have the need to belong, to be connected, to feel we're important and count, to make a contribution. That's the reality of every human being. So if we know we're the same, it makes it easier, right, to do some of the things that we have to balance ourselves to do for the bank account. So I don't know how many people would be in your cheerleading circle, but I never put arms on, because I'm worried if I put them on and they think they have to fill them out, but the most they can do are 2. Do you see what I mean? It's discouragement. So I just wait till they tell me, and then I put the line on, and then I put the name on. Do you see what I mean? Because if you put them on, then they think they have to live up to the expectation of 7 significant people when they might only have 1 or 2. And teenagers are interesting because they're so self-critical that it's very hard for them. They'll say, yeah, she's kind of a friend, but not a real friend. Or, yeah, she's kind of nice sometimes, but then she's ugly. I say, well, could we put her on half-time and only think of her in her good state? Or, you know, we use humor a lot to kind of trying to lighten this up so that they don't feel that they're not successful. Your job when you work with clients is to have them successful. But a person is never a depressive, these words, or a schizzy. You know, like people come into me and say, you know, I am da-da-da-da-da, and I say, well, I appreciate those are labels that somebody's given you or you've given yourself, but that doesn't tell me who you are. I want to know more about blah, blah, blah. And they say, yes, but you know my depression. And I say, I do know about depression, but I also need to know, like, why now? A very important question at Adlerian is, why are they coming now? Why did they decide to make this difference now? Like, what's the now about in their work? And therefore, you know that something has changed, something triggered them to come, right, or to do, and what's that circumstance? Because you need to know what's bringing them. Like, when was the first time you thought of coming to therapy? And some people say to me, 11 years ago. I say, well, you are an amazingly courageous human being. If you have thought for 11 years of coming and now you've arrived, you have put a lot of work in already, right? And it takes tremendous courage to come here. It takes tremendous courage to talk about ourselves and admit that we're struggling, because the world teaches us in ads on television that we're all supposed to be okay, right? No ads have people, and if they do, they just have drugs right beside it. You see what I mean? So they'll tell you, you have this, but here's the drug that'll cure it, and you'll be happy by tomorrow. Like, that, to me, is just crazy making. But that's what they see. So I wouldn't want to go to therapy either if I felt I had all that stuff, right? All those labels, all I mean, I feel like I'm already a loss. So here I am coming in to see if you're going to tell me I'm a loss. Doesn't that make sense? Yeah, is this what you feel when you see your clients, that they're coming in and they have a lot of courage to come through the door? And some of them have been mandated, which takes even more courage, right, to come into therapy if you've been pushed into it, because you didn't even have a choice. Right? Coupleship is a dance. So I make a step or I don't make a step, and then you respond. Then I make another step, then we don't step, then we stand still, then I'm over there and you're over here. I mean, coupleship is a miracle. You know, people say, how did you sustain 47 years? I said, I don't have a clue, actually, because, you know, it's been wonderful, it's been challenging, it's been knowledge-seeking, it's been, you know, and I mean, we're opposites, like every other couple seem to find the opposite and then say, what's wrong with you? You could be more like me, right? And so it's always fun. And why I do couple work is I laugh a lot with couples, just because they say, that is ridiculous, isn't it? And I say, I don't know. I mean, that's your dance. Oh, they say, this is a terrible dance, because I use the metaphor of dancing. I think that's what we're all doing. Communication is dancing. Marriage is dancing. Parent-child is dancing. We're always dancing. You just have to watch where your feet are, right? Like, are you stepping in somebody's feet, right? Are you standing like this and hardly able to balance? Are you like this and I don't want to move, right? I mean, what's the movement? Because that's what Adler said. We need to watch where the feet are pointed. So I think when you think about marriage, it is kind of a dance.